Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. We're here bringing you the latest and greatest geeky news of the week. Unfortunately, I am flying solo tonight. Courtney is not feeling great, so she had to step out for this week. It's a lot of this weather really doesn't play nicely with her. Um, so unfortunately, she's not in a state to record. So, um, otherwise, we've got some a couple news items here for this week. A lot of D&D news this week. So we'll be talking about that later. Um, but as usual, it might be a little bit of a shorter episode just because I don't have the back and forth banter with Courtney. So, uh, why don't we get right into this week's quickfire news? And of course, my computer restarted, so it blew out all of the bumpers. All right. So, hang on. I can fix that. I can in fact fix that. But we'll talk about the news that we got going on this week. Um, First up, World of Warcraft Chains of Domination is out. And this patch is we're gonna talk about this later. This patch is interesting. Which is to say, which is, code for it could be a lot better. So, um, yeah, we're definitely going to go into a lot more of why that is. But in summation, it's very short, it's very small, and the story's just not that great. Um, and it's drawing a lot of ire from the community, especially after such a long wait for content. So yeah, Chains of Domination, not great. All right. D&D Live 2021. So this is Wizards of the Coast's annual online event that they do to showcase the new products for the upcoming year. They're partnering with G4 TV. Yeah, that's a name that we haven't heard of in forever. So apparently G4 is back. And they're partnering with them to do this stream. It's going to be on Twitch, YouTube, and NBC streaming service Peacock. Um, which I mean, like that's a like a real quote unquote television streaming service, so that's pretty interesting and neat. Um, of note is you can see at 3:10 p.m. Eastern time on the day one event schedule breakout unannounced book deep dive. So apparently there is one more book that Wizards hasn't talked about yet that will be released. So a lot of speculation going on as to what that could be. Next up, Dungeons and Dragons: Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. This is the Magic the Gathering crossover set that they're doing with Dungeons and Dragons. This releases fairly soon. There's a lot of pre-release tournaments going on locally here at various game shops. Many of them are sold out, so make sure that you get a spot if you're into that. Um, New mechanics in this set include things like class cards. So it's like an enchantment where um, that has a subtype of class. So like you would play like a rogue card or a warlock card, and it will have costs on the card that you can pay to like level up your class, which allows you to do different things. Um, there's dungeons. Dungeons are probably the weirdest card in the set. So there's 3 dungeons. There's the Tomb of Annihilation, the Lost Mines of Fandelver, and I want to say Keep on the Borderlands? Maybe? I can't remember what the third one is. Um, the intent is to represent sort of these iconic, introductory dungeons that they've released over the past few years for, or no, it's Dungeon of the Mad Mage. That's what the third one is. For Wizards for Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. Um, the way this works is these cards don't go in your deck. They're like treated as outside of the game board. So like you can put them in your sideboard, but they also don't count as being in your sideboard. Um, and what you do is there'll be cards that say like venture into the dungeon, and what you do is, uh, these cards will have like a path on them that you can take. It's basically like decision trees. And what you do is you start at the top, and whenever a card tells you to venture into the dungeon, you just move along the decision track along to the next point. And like if there's a split, you get to pick which path you take. And then there's benefits to doing that. You can do the same dungeon multiple times. You can do multiple dungeons. Um, and you get generally progressively better and better benefits. There are some cards that also relate to dungeons. For example, there's a Gloomstalker card, which is supposed to be based on the Ranger subclass. That if you've completed a dungeon, it gets double strike. So interesting interactions there. Um, roll a d20 is a mechanic. So they showcased a couple different cards. Like one is a rogue type card where it has sneak attack. And it's like when you deal combat damage to a player, I think it's or just when you deal combat damage, you roll a d20, and the card gets a bunch of benefits based on the value that you rolled. So if you roll a 1, it's not as good. If you roll a 20, really great. And it, again, gets progressively better and better with the higher numbers you roll. Additionally, there are going to be flavor text options on the card. And what these are like they're card abilities, and like they're activated abilities. Um but uh it's almost like their way of introducing a whole bunch of mechanics without having to come up with keywords. Um So, like a card may be like you come up to a door and it's like pick the lock or bash the door in. And it'll like say like pick the lock or bash the door in. And depending on which option you pick, you get a different effect. Um, so I mean it kind of reminds me of like the dual cards that they had in the sets where like you flip it around based on which one you want. But these are literally like it's italicized text for the name. So really interesting. I think that's the most interesting mechanic out of this, as well as the class cards. Like dungeons are all right. The D20 introducing luck mechanics into Magic the Gathering has always been much maligned. Um, so we'll see. I think overall reactions to this set are mixed. I think it's more of the novelty factor for doing a crossover, but like people that aren't interested, like people that are super interested in Magic, not really interested in D&D, are not happy about this set. Because it seems like it's kind of a gimmick set. Um, but I mean the point is to kind of just do like a one-off and have it be there. Um, next up, we got a season 2 trailer for The Witcher, which the season 2 releases on December 17th. Netflix also released a teaser for Nightmare of the Wolf, which was a previously announced animated film by the animation studio Mir, known for Legend of Korra. That's going to follow Vesemir's early days, and is supposed to be a prequel to this series. Um, it looks pretty cool. It definitely has that like Korra slash Avatar art style. So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see Vesemir as like a young dude instead of, like the super old guy that you meet in the Witcher games. And then finally, Loki's season 1 finale released today. We're not going to go into spoilers for that. But it was renewed for a second season. So that was announced. Um, Loki's been very well received. Um, and Disney and Marvel seem to have confidence in how the series was received, enough to greenlight it aha, for a second season. So we'll get more shenanigans from these folks. So uh, that is going to wrap up our quick fire news. So let's see if the bumpers work. Let's get in on our deep dive, discussing World of Warcraft Shadowlands Chains of Domination. There we go. All right. So let's talk about this. So ultimately, I did play through the storyline of this. So I don't raid anymore. So I go into looking at stuff that's happening with Warcraft from like I don't want to say casual perspective, but it's certainly a lot more casual than a lot of folks are that are kind of playing retail these days. Um, I got through the story in like 4 hours, which when you think about it is not that long for an MMORPG. So um ultimately very short, and they seem to try and want to stretch out the content with a mythic dungeon, a raid, and daily quests. So for somebody that like doesn't do high level dungeons and high level raids, um like I'm out for that. So that just leaves daily quests in this very small area that's tacked on to the Maw, which is for those that don't, it's basically where D&D's version of like Satan lives, like the jailer. Um and the Maw is it's annoying. It's designed to be annoying. Um and it's really just kind of awful. Um and I won't spoil the story, but because the raid is out, you're able to view like the final cinematic um on YouTube. So I did. Uh and I got to say I'm not impressed. It's kind of just continuing the same beats. And it feels like the story's not really going anywhere at this point. Like it's kind of just rehashing literally the same story from the past several expansions. Um So that was ultimately disappointing. To the point that like I played the 4 hours. I don't know if I'm gonna go back in and play this. Um, I mean, there were a couple of interesting beats in the story leading up, um, but I mean, I feel like Blizzard is kind of banking on the fact that like once you complete the patch quest line, you unlock flying for Shadowlands. Uh, that they're hoping that that is what will keep people in, as well as the raid. And I don't know. Like, honestly, I had been trying for so long to get like certain items uh, that supposedly aren't that rare of a drop, and they just weren't dropping. So like, I gave up. It's I could spend my time playing other games these days. Um, and so the thought of like, well, now I finished that. There's not really anything else that's enticing about this new patch. Like, there's not really any interesting gear or treasure or little toys or pets or anything. Um, so ultimately, it's not really anything enticing to keep me in there. So I'm sure for raiders, they'll enjoy doing the raid. It's got some interesting bosses in there. Um, and I mean, this isn't a spoiler, but like you fight Kel'Thuzad, which they decided to just bring back. Um, you fight Sylvanas, she's the final boss. Uh, but it just ultimately it feels like a rehash of doing like Wrath of the Lich King stuff, which seems to be the trend. Like, it was like Warlords of Draenor and Legion kind of felt like a rehash of Burning Crusade. Um, so then Shadowlands kind of feels a little bit like a rehash of Wrath of the Lich King, um, especially in terms of aesthetics, uh, because all the architecture in the Maw is basically the same architecture as you see like an Ice Crown. Um, just with a red palette swap instead of a, that icy white blue palette swap. So, um, ultimately, that's what I got for Chains of Domination. Um, I did want to talk a little bit about D&D Live though, because in particular, so for those that are watching live here, there is a game being run by Kate Welch, that's titled The Lost Odyssey Last Light. Um, Not really sure what that's referring to, but the cast for this game is particularly interesting. So we've got Jack Black, Reggie Watts, Lauren Lapkus, Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes, and Tiffany Haddish. This is like an all-star cast for running a D&D game. I'm super, super interested to watch this game and see, especially that like the pure chaos that Kevin Smith, Jack Black, and Jason Mewes can come up with. Um, I'm I'm very stoked for it. Uh, so we'll have to see what's going on with that. There are a couple of other interesting games going on, but I didn't want to run too much time um, trying to go into all of them. Um, so uh, the other thing is this unannounced book. Now, there's a lot of speculation that it could be a Dragonlance book gets announced. Um, some of the signs point to that, like, Wizards finally made nice with Weiss and Hickman regarding the lawsuit over like sending them drafts of books that they were supposed to get paid for and didn't get paid for, and because they decided to cancel the project, everything. Um, so I don't know if those books are moving forward, but at least like the lawsuit got dropped and everything got settled. Uh, and then they started putting out like more dragon content. Um, so if it's not going to be a Dragonlance book, at least like a dragon themed book. Um, and I don't know if it would be a campaign setting though, because we are getting, so we're getting an adventure slash campaign, in uh what is it, Witchlight, like Into the Feywild, whatever that book's called. It's got an absurdly long name. um and then we're getting Strixhaven as a campaign setting, and I don't know if like they're gonna throw that out as like a one-off Magic the Gathering tie-in and then do another campaign setting, or if they're gonna do like another player options book or like a Draconomicon. um I think either of those would be really interesting. I would be shocked if we saw, just because of like the whole trajectory over what Dragonlance has kind of gone through as a property over the past couple of years. I would be absolutely shocked if it turned out to be a Dragonlance campaign setting guide. I wouldn't be mad by any means. Uh, it's just like there has been so much against that as a concept. Um, like not the least of which this like giant, not giant, but like big lawsuit between the people that write Dragonlance and then the people that like technically own the rights to Dragonlance. So it's gonna be wild. Um, so yeah, that is happening. As it is happening July 16th and 17th, so this weekend, Friday and Saturday. And we can actually we'll bring up the schedule. Um, so we've got some talk about Magic Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is the sort of Feywild campaign setting. We're gonna get music from Jason Charles Miller, who does the Critical Role theme. Um, some other games that we get will be Chaos Carnival, Palace of the Vampire Queen, Dungeon Master Showdown. Um, there's gonna be Dungeon Master Roundtable, which will have a bunch of Dungeon Masters talking about like tips on how to run your game. Um, uh, so cosplay cooking. Heroes Feast, I believe, is the D&D cookbook. So they might be doing recipes from cookbook. Flubby Bonks and Guzzle Shucks is another game that's going to be run. They're going to do a deep dive on Strixhaven. And then Faster Purple Worm Kill Kill, I believe, is going to be run by B. Dave Walters. And it is a level 20 one shot that they're running just to show how off the wall uh like end game D&D can be. Um so um yeah, ultimately so it starts at 3 p.m. Eastern on each day and then runs to 11 p.m. Eastern in each day. Um Sadly I will have to miss the Strixhaven deep dive and Faster Purple Worm because that's what I'm streaming. But them's the breaks. So I believe these VODs will be on Twitch and YouTube. Um, so on D&D's official channels. Uh, so yeah, I think that is going to wrap up the deep dive. Um, so we're gonna get into this week's quest log. Uh, I think before we take some questions from the chat maybe on anything that happened this week. That was a lot louder than I thought it would be. So quest log. Normally, when I have my co-host here, so quest log is what we talk about, like what sort of geeky goals. Um, oh, she did. Okay, fantastic. Uh, cool. Thank you, Joe. Um, where we talk about what sort of geeky goals we had over the past week that we worked on, and what sort of geeky goals we want to set for the upcoming week. All right. So Courtney um, has been working on, she's been working on this for the past couple of weeks, is finishing the gourmet achievement for Stardew Valley, uh, which is cooking every recipe in the game. So we learned last week that some of the ones that she had left were recipes that you have to get from befriending other townsfolk. So she has been working on that. Uh, she says she has gotten obelisks for the island and the desert. Which, for those that don't know, in Stardew Valley, obelisks are like a very, very late game item that allow you to teleport to other locations. Um, so one being the tropical island, and the other one being the desert. So like you don't have to take the bus; you can just like teleport there. Um, this is notable because two of the recipes that she needs are from NPCs in each of those locations. So um, and she needs one from George, which that one's easy. George is because George just sits in town. Um, so yeah, hope that goes well for you, Courtney. And good luck on cooking all that stuff. I know George's recipe is pretty simple once you get it. Because on my own playthrough, I got George's recipe super early because it's just really easy to befriend him. So for my goals for this past week, I did recolor a chapter 1 comic. So we're making pretty good progress on that. If I keep on track, I will make my New Year's resolution of recoloring all of my chapter 1 8-bit adventures comics um in time to get them ready for publication. Um I did put out a TikTok video today about ability checks and how they work and how to think about them, because a lot of people, and to their credit, the book is also a bit the player's handbook for D&D 5e is a bit contradictory in how to think about ability checks, because um they say to think about them as ability checks, but then they also like assign skills to a particular ability score. Um which, if you start with the ability and then say like, oh, if you have a proficiency, you can apply it. Kind of runs contradictory to like think about your skill and then apply the relevant ability score to it. Um, which is how it used to work in previous editions. But it also explains like how tools work and other things. Um, so I did make one for that. Next up, I'm going to make one regarding NPCs and classes. Namely, as a reminder to folks that NPCs in your game do not have to have levels in a class. You can just give them a stat block, which means they can do whatever you want. You are not constrained by the rules concerning a certain class. Uh, so if you want to make an NPC that's like a sword mage, it's like a wizard with a sword. Uh, or to pull from one of the games that we saw in E3, wizards with guns, right? You can just do it. You don't have to like look up and figure out how to make them multi-class to work together and things. Like no, you can give them abilities that mix and match. Um, because ultimately, I mean, really the goal for statting up an NPC is, are you going to introduce them into combat? And if the answer is yes, like, are they going to be fighting alongside the players? Or are they going to be fighting against the players? Um, if they're fighting alongside the players, half the time I don't stat up NPCs when they do that. I don't. Unless it's absolutely necessary. Um, and then I did start work on the Hinterlands page for the Jamora campaign guide. And my goal for this upcoming week is to just continue work on that and try and finish it up. So, all right. So that is quest log. We are running a little short on time than we normally do. So let's see if we have any questions or commentary from the peanut gallery about any of the news this week or any non-spoilers. So I don't want to give away spoilers for anything. So I don't really have a bumper for it, so we're just going to play Smite and do that. So yeah, anyone got any thoughts on D&D Live? Are there any other WoW players in the chat? I know that seems like it's very difficult to actually find people that play World of Warcraft these days, compared to say like Final Fantasy 14. Or what are people's thoughts on Loki? And I'll give it a minute. I'm just gonna play some music to. All right. Well, yes. So, it's not really a spoiler because it's just a character. I'm gonna say, but there is a Loki Gator. Um, and quite possibly, Loki Gator might be my second favorite MCU character after Korg. um, and I mean, it's basically it's an alligator Loki. That's really all that it is. Uh, so there's not really any further plot outside of that. Um, and I mean, we kind of knew there was a multiverse thing going on. Oh yes, I forgot to include that. Yeah, so Free Guy is a film coming out. I think starring Ryan Reynolds and maybe directed by Taika Waititi. Um, and so they got the okay from Marvel to do a reaction video with both Deadpool and Korg. Which is sort of this backdoor weird way of like introducing, like pulling Deadpool kind of into the MCU or doing a crossover thing uh by having the two of them react to their own film but as the Marvel characters that they play. And it's splendid. It's absurd, it's splendid. It's got sort of that Taika Waititi humor to it. Um, it's great. I actually saw it in a TikTok ad first before I saw the other video. Um, because that's how things happen these days. So, all right. I don't want to drag this out too much further. So, apologies for the short episode tonight, folks. But yeah, these things happen. So, um, if you would like to see more content from 8-Bit Adventures, you can check out 8-bitadventures.com. Over there, you can find the 8-Bit Adventures comic, which is the brand that started all this other stuff. Um, you can find VODs of the streams and podcasts, uh, my artwork, and just other general stuff. If you would like to help support that content, you can do so in two ways. One is you can become a patron at patreon.com/8bitadventures. Or you can subscribe right here on Twitch. Um, big shout out and thank you to Twitch subscribers and the patrons. It's because of your help we're able to make these projects possible, and basically, support hosting costs for the various podcasts and websites and platforms and things. Um, Finally, our opening theme for this podcast is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his work over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. Uh, and with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. So, as always, have fun, everyone. Happy gaming and enjoy your pie cake.